All right, good morning. I have to admit I feel a little bit out of place and very much inadequate being part of this very industry-intensive panel this morning. These guys have gone out into the real world and done real things, brought real technologies to market. I've spent most of the last 20 years working in my research lab, dreaming about the work that I'm doing, getting out into the real world, but to be realistic, most of that involves publishing papers and recruiting and training graduate students. So those are my only real products, I guess, that I've delivered to the real world. But 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to move to DARPA in Arlington, Virginia, to really try to accelerate the development of neurotechnologies and try to move them more quickly from the lab environment where I had been working to that real world, so that the science and technology that's moving the field forward can actually start having real impact on people's lives. So I really wear two hats these days. I spend a small amount of my time still at the University of Pittsburgh, but most of my time is spent at DARPA as a program manager in the Biological Technologies Office, which formed just a year and a half ago, so it's a brand new office for the agency, and it really represents DARPA's appreciation for biology and its potential impact on national security. So the DARPA mission overall is to develop breakthrough technologies for national security, and as you can imagine, that can cover a lot of things. And in the domain of biological technologies, one of our core pillars is in neurotechnology, neuroscience and neurotechnology. And shown here are just some of the programs that we have in the Biological Technologies Office. You can see many of them are neuroscience focused. We're focusing on understanding the neuroscience of movement control, brain function, cognitive function, neuropsychiatric disorders, as well branching off into new directions, looking at the interaction between the nervous system and broader aspects of human health and performance. And so as our neuroscience and neurotechnology portfolio grows, we are continuing to recruit program managers in this area. And I would encourage any of you with an interest in DARPA's work, especially in the medical device area, to really consider coming to us and volunteering to work as a DARPA PM. I think this is a really exciting time for biological technologies, especially neurotechnologies. So across this broad portfolio, there's really three common elements that are sort of central to how we approach the science and technology that we do in these areas. The first is that we try to create, we approach every program with a capability objective in mind. We want to create technology that provides some powerful impact on national security. But we always do so with fundamental research being the foundation for that work. So we don't want to build technology blindly. We want to make sure we understand the core neuroscience and physiology that's relevant to the operation of that technology. And then we use that knowledge to innovate in the technology space, building technologies that can leverage that underlying physiology to serve or support some new treatment or capability. And then as well, we try to accelerate the pace at which we get to human translation. So we don't want to spend too much time, or we don't want to spend all of our time at that preclinical stage, because we want to be sure that the science we're doing and the technology we're developing is relevant for the human condition, because that's where our national security priorities lie. Okay? So that's an overview of the DARPA neurotechnology portfolio. One example of a bold vision that DARPA had for breakthrough technology is in the area of prosthetics. And so Dr. Jeff Ling, the founding director of the Biological Technologies Office, created the Revolutionizing Prosthetics program just over 10 years ago now, with the vision of really eliminating what is still the current standard in upper extremity amputee treatment, this body-powered hook prosthesis, which has a single degree of freedom, powered by movements of the user's shoulders. This today is still the standard of care for upper extremity amputees. And recognizing this, DARPA made a commitment to try to see how close we could get to that Luke Skywalker vision of a anthropomorphic hand and arm prosthesis that looks, moves, and maybe one day will even feel like a natural hand. Okay? And so 8 years after the launching of that program, the DARPA-funded effort at DECA created the Luke arm, inspired by, of course, the Star Wars movie. And this arm has market approval from the FDA. That was provided in May of 2014. This limb has near human-like motion and force-generating characteristics. It has a fully articulated shoulder, elbow, wrist, and hand. And it's capable of really amazing dexterity, clearly well beyond what's possible with the current standard of care. But where are we at? This technology, like many breakthrough technologies, is still struggling to find its way into the market. Okay, so we have many examples, and these are just a few shown here, of technologies which, when they were developed, were recognized, and even still today are recognized as breakthrough technologies. The first upper extremity FES, implantable FES system for people with tetraplegia, promising to restore hand and some arm function to people with tetraplegia. Brought to market in the first tested in patients in the mid 80s, brought to market in the 90s, and then subsequently removed from the market because the company failed to generate enough revenue. Another breakthrough technology is the Bion, which someone in the audience mentioned this morning. This is another really impressive example of breakthrough technology, injectable stimulators. You don't have to do the surgery that's required for implanting leads and pulse generators. This is a device in which a large number of nodes could be implanted in the body just through a needle injection, obviating the need for surgery. All of this could be done as an outpatient procedure. Why hasn't this found its way into the market? It clearly has. Clearly represents a breakthrough capability. There are still studies ongoing, but as I mentioned, nothing brought to market yet. Cyberkinetics and the BrainGate trial for intracortical brain-computer interfaces. This technology promises to enable people with profound paralysis to control assistive technologies. Lots of wonderful demonstrations of that technology. Cyberkinetics actually went public in the early 2000s, got FDA approval for their technology to do early clinical trials, and those trials, while still ongoing, and are providing us with new important information about how the brain works and how these technologies might be used, this technology still has not provided the basis for a commercial product. And then I've already mentioned the DECA arm. So the point here is that having breakthrough technology is really just the first step. I mean, it's hard work and it requires great creativity to create these wonderful technologies, but we can't set that as our only objective. Okay? So what are some of the barriers? And this is something we struggle with at DARPA, realizing that we're committed to this idea of breakthrough technology, but not simply for demonstration purposes. We want to be looking ahead at understanding what are some of the factors that are going to impede the progress of that technology from actually getting out and having impact. And so one of the areas that we've recognized is that maybe this shouldn't be surprising, but certainly the device has to work, and it has to work reliably for long periods of time. Okay, and so one of the things that, that is perhaps a little bit surprising in the medical device space is that in many cases, there are few physiological indicators of that device's engagement with the body. You know, Tim talked about this in his talk this morning, that, you know, initially in the early days, all the devices operated open loop. In cases like movement disorders, maybe there's some overt behavioral response that you can observe. But in many other cases, there is no motor symptom that can be monitored. You know, maybe there's, you know, the intention of the device is to promote release of some neurochemical in the brain. Well, how do we measure that? How do we confirm that the technology is in fact engaging the neural targets that they're supposed to be engaging? And I'm showing here an image from the SetPoint, a new startup called SetPoint Medical. They use a vagal nerve stimulator to promote or to suppress inflammatory cytokine production in the spleen. Well, how does one go about measuring responses in the spleen when you have a device that's targeting the vagus nerve? Okay, so perhaps technologies that allow us to measure directly the response in the nervous system and then using that as feedback to provide control over those devices. Okay, so we need to make sure that the physiology is being engaged effectively. And we also have to make sure that the devices that we're using aren't so sophisticated and fragile that they fail to operate for long periods of time. And so I'm showing data on the bottom, or a cartoon on the bottom left, produced by work in John Donahue's lab, talking about just some of the common failure modes for devices like the Utah electrode array, which, you know, we've seen provides incredible capabilities for controlling external devices, but it's obviously essential that that function be provided for the lifetime of the patient for that technology to have true impact. Another one of the barriers is that, as you know, we've seen through some of our examples, is that the market is actually fairly slow at adopting breakthrough technology. You know, when the iPhone was first brought to market many years ago, the market responded very immediately, right? Sales went through the roof and have continued to grow exponentially almost every year. Maybe not exponentially, but you know, certainly market uptake in the consumer electronics area is very different than market uptake in the medical device area. And we have to recognize that, and we have to understand what some of the factors are that affect or that contribute to this slow adoption of technology. And I'll talk about some of these a little bit later, you know, but obviously the uncertainty about long-term outcomes is really a factor. The fact that, you know, devices that are approved as, you know, a single complete system make those devices too rigid to be adapted to future applications and limit expansion in the market. And then there's also this you know, often unspoken or unrecognized barrier, which is that, you know, clinicians will typically see devices as a treatment of last resort. You know, they're willing to try just about every drug that they can find in their script log before they consider using a device which may work better and have fewer side effects than the drugs that they're considering. You know, but because maybe the function of the devices isn't fully understood, the capability of the devices isn't as optimal as it could be, the fact that, you know, the technologies we're creating are often seen in the market as really the last resort, I think is something we have to work together as a community to change. Related to this is, I think, really understanding, or, you know, first recognizing that there are stakeholders outside of your lab. You know, there's people that have good ideas about what's important and what should be done that extend beyond your engineering team. And I think talking to those people up front and throughout the product development and evaluation process is really critical. And so, understand what are patient priorities, what are caregiver priorities, and so on. And then as well, when you're doing that, when you're engaging this community, make sure you're also educating them as well. Make sure they understand really what you're trying to do and how it might be better than things that exist today. And also be prepared to maybe take with a grain of salt some of the feedback that they give you. Because oftentimes when you try to paint a picture for a patient of what some new technology might look like or what effect it might have on their health condition, they may not fully appreciate what those benefits are. And so, just when you're engaging stakeholders, realize that you have to go in, very open-minded. Coverage is certainly another barrier. This one's perhaps very obvious, but what might not be obvious is some of the timelines. And we talked about long timelines this morning. You may get through the FDA regulatory very quickly, but that doesn't mean you're done, right? You still have to get somebody to pay for this, pay for your technology. And shown us some data here that the timeline for getting coverage for your device, may be orders of magnitude longer than the regulatory process. And then another thing to keep in mind, depending on the nature of your technology and its intended applications, when you're considering how to measure benefit or outcome of that technology, you may have to start from scratch to develop new outcome assessment tools. There may not be instruments in the market today to evaluate the capability of your technology. If you're creating a wholly new treatment for something, then existing outcome measures may not be appropriate or will unlikely be appropriate. And then finally, in terms of lessons learned, reliability is certainly something that we recognize is a barrier, and at DARPA we've taken steps to address proactively with programs like the Reliable Neural Interface Technology Program. So we recognize that technologies like intracortical electrodes for brain-computer interface control provide amazing capabilities. But if those capabilities are always going to be limited to 1 or 2 years of performance, then clearly they're going to have limited value in the commercial space. So the ReNet program was created to first understand why do these implants fail over time, and then second, what can we be doing from a bioengineering and device engineering standpoint to ensure that performance improves and remains stable throughout the lifespan of the implant and the patient. A second lesson is to really make sure we first understand the physiology, understand how the device is supposed to engage with the physiology and what that physiology response is supposed to be. Okay, so when we're implanting a device to stimulate nerves to try to elicit some response downstream in the body, whether it be in the brain or in the spinal cord or in some end organ, let's make sure we understand what an appropriate response is. Let's make sure we understand what potential side effects might be and try to guard against those. And then let's try to build that understanding into technology that really optimally engages those circuits in the most efficacious fashion. And so the Electrics program is a program that I just kicked off a couple weeks ago, which is aimed at creating neural interface technology that monitors and regulates peripheral nerve circuits to control various aspects of our health. And then another sort of lesson learned, or something we certainly preach and try to practice at DARPA, is let's try to get the technology out of the lab. Okay, whether it's an academic lab or an industry lab, let's make sure we're doing everything we can to get it out into the real world and put it to the test in a community environment. Okay, and so the Haptics program is a program that I started a few months ago, which is aimed at developing implantable bidirectional nerve interface technology integrating that technology into one of into the DECA arm for bidirectional control of the DECA hand. And then by the end of the program, we're going to spend the full last year of that program in the community. Okay, so these are devices that are going to have full FDA approval as an investigational device, and we're going to test them not just in the lab, but out in the community. We want to understand what the user experience is going to be in that environment, which is much less controlled than your typical laboratory. Okay, maybe a final lesson, which I think I mentioned already. You know, we need to talk to stakeholders. We need to get their input. Make sure you do that early, and make sure you and they understand what the value proposition is with your technology. I think Tim already mentioned something about public-private partnerships. I think these are becoming increasingly important in this complex device industry space. And so there are a growing number of programs that try to bring together people from government, industry, and academia to try to work together in a space that's, you know, maybe pre-competitive, where there's clearly a lot of challenges that need to be addressed. Some of those challenges, you know, relate to marketing, but many others relate to, you know, basic product development. And to the extent that we can work as a community, as a vibrant ecosystem, to solve some of these many challenges, I think it will help us all move the field forward. And just one nice example of a specific example of work in this area, the Medical Device Innovation Consortium is a not-for-profit entity that was propped up a few years ago, which is working to do this, to bring together people from government, academia, and the private sector to try to, you know, pool resources and move the whole field forward as quickly as we can, such that beneficial, high-impact treatments are brought to the market much sooner. Some ongoing efforts, maybe things we're thinking about that could change kind of the future of the technology landscape. Things like multifunctional neurotechnologies. You know, can we think of sort of a set of Lego blocks for medical devices, where instead of having to have the entire system approved as a single device, can we have standardized components that interact in standardized ways, such that depending on the number of stimulation channels you need, or the number of recording channels that you need, or the amount of sort of onboard computing power that you need, you can sort of create on the fly a device that's customized and tailored to the unique needs of each patient. And so I think devices like the Medtronic PC+S are a nice example of this, where there's firmware on board the device that can be reconfigured, giving that device maybe different operating characteristics, allowing flexible testing of new treatment paradigms. And certainly devices like the Bion and the implantable myoelectric sensor represent another nice example of how this technology might look, where you think about the device as a collection of capability nodes, and the configuration of those capability nodes defines the operation of your device. And if we can move to a future like this, then you can imagine that the costs associated with bringing new applications to market could be greatly reduced. If you have a bunch of already approved nodes that can be reconfigured in a flexible way, then that would greatly speed the pace at which we can test new treatments. So just to summarize, I think it's obvious that this translational highway that we talk about is obviously a long and winding road. We talked about decade and multi-decade long development and commercialization efforts that are ongoing for many of the technologies. I think an important thing to keep in mind if you're thinking about getting on this highway is that you shouldn't plan to go it alone. Okay, and I think being honest with yourself about where you and your technology are on this highway. We often maybe feel a little too proud about ourselves and our technology and think that maybe we're actually much closer to this product development phase than we really are, or maybe we're too cautious and we're actually much further along in the process than we think. Regardless, make sure that you reach out, that you find partners that can help you figure out where you are and then figure out how to move forward with your technology, because we all want to get down here, because if we spend all of our time just doing the basic research, then clearly the community impact is never achieved. So with that, I'll take a question or two.